KSJE is supported by San Juan Regional Medical Center, a community-owned and operated hospital. Here for you when you need us. From emergency care to routine checkups and screenings, caregivers are here and ready to provide the safe, high-quality care you need close to home. Online at sanjuanregional.com with the latest health information and resources to help you live life better here. Minutes past 8 o'clock. It is Monday morning, the last day of February 2022. Good morning, everyone. I'm Scott Michlin, and thank you for tuning in to KSJE 90.9 FM, of course, over the air here in San Juan County, New Mexico. Streaming everywhere else on the planet from KSJE.com, and we invite you to join us visually. This visual radio program is streaming out live this morning to the KSJE Facebook page, our YouTube channel, and our Twitter account. So you can join us on any one of those social media platforms. But however you found your way to us this morning, we're glad that you are with us, because coming up in the next few moments, my guest this morning, Hank Adair from the Farmington Electric Utility System. We'll be talking about plans for summer power in Farmington. There were concerns, of course, that P&M raised about maybe some possible brownouts and other shortages of meeting energy demand this summer. Farmington Electric Utility, of course, is separate from P&M, so what are they planning to do in the wake of some power supply issues this summer? We'll get an update from Hank Adair coming up in the next few moments right here on KSJE, and of course we'll talk about solar as well, because that's been a big topic with the Farmington Electric Utility in recent weeks. Then, of course, later on this hour at 8:50 a.m., Lewis Campbell will be joining me to talk about technology. It's our Monday Reboot segment right here on KSJE, so we hope you'll tune in for that. And then next hour, Mick Hess is going to take us roving with the arts, and this morning, Mick is featuring music from Rossini and Offenbach. You'll hear both of those composers coming up this morning at 9:06 on KSJE's long-running classical music program, Roving with the Arts. Check us out on our Instagram page in addition to Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you like podcasts, you can connect with KSJE wherever you listen to podcasts for free and take us with you wherever you may end up going this spring. Weather forecast, it is currently outside our studios here at San Juan College, 24 degrees in Farmington at the moment. We are expecting a mostly partly cloudy day today, partly sunny, I should say, too, with a high today of about 53 degrees. Clear tonight with a low near 21. Partly sunny tomorrow, the high near 59. 62 by Wednesday, maybe 67, with partly sunny skies by Thursday, and overnight lows, as you can see, from 21 degrees tonight to about 39 degrees on Thursday, and then maybe some showers moving into the area for the end of the week on Friday, Saturday, and on Sunday. Joining me this morning to talk a bit about the Farmington Electric Utility, the director of the Electric Utility, Hank Adair, is with me from his offices. Good morning. Thanks for joining me, Mr. Adair.
Good morning, Scott. Thank you for inviting me. Happy to be on.
You bet. Great to see you and have you with us. It's kind of a busy time and a different time for folks in the electricity business, and so there's a lot to talk about. I guess first thing maybe on the table is you had a meeting, a public meeting last week with folks from the area and your customers, and so I just wanted to kind of touch base on that. That was to unveil this new rate survey that the utility has been doing.
You bet. What we're in the middle of is what's called a cost of service study, and I can tell you I'm so proud and happy to be part of Public Power because we're owned by our community, basically. That's what keeps our rates low, keeps our reliability up, things like that. But every so often a utility goes through what's a cost of service study, what is needed for our capital and O&M costs to keep the lights on, keep things reliable. And that's where we're in the middle of. And so what you've seen from the public comment last Thursday is we've done information-only sessions with our utility commission, and then we were looking to get some additional feedback by our customers. We did a public input meeting all the way back last October before we really started the rate study design, the cost of service study, to look at what rate design would be. And then this was another step in that to get public input once we've created a rate design from that cost of service study. What's really positive for it is the utility as a whole, we've managed our expenses very well. And assuming some assumptions like if San Juan is successful in our cost of service study for all customers, our rates will actually remain flat across all our customer classes. What we've looked to see is we need to do some adjustments on what customer classes are having cost shifting for the high energy users, let's say the industrial customers to the residential customers. And that's what those analysis showed, is there needed to be a very slight increase for residential customers. The average residential customer about $1.65 per month that does not have solar. Let me clarify that. And other users within that class, high energy users, might actually see a small rate decrease, and low energy users might see a very slight rate increase or cost monthly on their bill, but very small. I'm very proud of that for our utility. That means we manage our expenses well while keeping our reliability at 99.974%.
Right, and you mentioned that this going up, maybe the increase being $1.60 or so, and that seems to be in the really single-digit range of percentage of increases, right? Even maybe 2%. Is that about what this is looking like if it were to go through?
Exactly, if approved, and I'll say that right now, as we've done information only, we haven't even presented it to PUC for advisement to council. That'll happen in the month of March, and then information to council and direction in March. So when we talk that's 2%, which is significantly less than inflation right now and things like that. So it's a very low cost increase that we're looking at. We're also looking to adjust within our rates how much fixed cost recovery we have. You know, we're a 1,700 square mile service territory. We're much bigger than just the city of Farmington. We cover much of San Juan County and even into Rio Arriba County for our service to our customers. And so there's a lot of infrastructure that goes behind that. Transmission lines, substations, distribution, all the way down to the pole, all the way down to the meter for the customer. And so we're very happy that we've kept our rates low and much lower than the cost of inflation. The other key point with that was looking at how we can get that fixed cost recovery up, and then what we do with our solar customers or our distributive generation. And what we had was fixed cost recovery, which was called a standby service rider previously. The new rate design from the feedback we've seen in October does not have a standby service rider. We do see a slight increase in fixed cost recovery, and thereby the energy rate goes down because that should be just the energy cost, the variable cost. They still do have some embedded fixed costs in them. So we're trying to find that right balance for our fixed cost recovery without having rate shock for the rest of our customers. And so this was a very good balance. And by removing that standby rate, then we're looking at doing what's called bi-directional net metering. And we're working with our customers to get feedback on it. It gives a lot of opportunities for our customers to look at the rates, and they're fair and consistent across the board.
And Mr. Adair, that sounds like we're talking about solar now, aren't we, for some of your customers? Yes. Is that the idea?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Scott. I segued
right.
the solar customers with that piece from residential to there.
Sure.
So that's very specific to the solar customers. What the utility is doing right now also is installing what's called advanced metering infrastructure. And so that allows us to have advancements on how we know how our customers are using energy. And so with our solar customers, we would install that advanced metering, and that gives a lot of benefits on resolution. And it also helps our customers to take advantage of that. So for example, a solar customer can adjust their load profile, their usage at their home, let's say, to match when they're solar producing to get the biggest benefit for their rate, or if you will, or for their bill,
right,
or their savings. You bet.
And so I wanted to follow up on that, and that is a topic that we wanted to cover this morning, is the changes coming to potentially to solar customers as part of the Farmington Electric Utility. And I want to be clear, we have two different types of solar customers I think that we're talking about, right? The standalone solar customers, they're not connected to the grid. They don't need power from your utility. They are generating what they use, and that's that. And then you have the customer that is tied into the grid, and so if they are generating excess power, they are able to share that and sell that, I guess, back to the utility. But if they are not generating enough power that they need and they're using more than they generate, they are pulling power from the grid at that time. Is that a good description of what we're talking about?
I think that was spot on, Scott. I think that was a great. If they're standalone, they're obviously not hooked to our system, and customers have the right to do that. There is not a requirement for a customer to be hooked up to the electric system or Farmington Electric. But if they are hooked up, if they are generating more than what they are using or consuming at their home, then basically they are selling that back to the utility at what we call the avoided cost. That's the cost of what it takes to buy or make it. And we would pay at that rate. If they're generating less than they're consuming, then we would sell back to the customer. And then again, all that infrastructure is included in what it costs to serve that customer all the way to their home.
Right. And so there was this standby service rider in place for several months, if not longer, right? And then that was ended by the city manager late last year, as I recall. And now, as part of this rate study, it's coming back in a form. And so I think in that, I hear from a lot of solar customers or folks that are considering solar and tying into the grid, that's going to still increase their costs. And so they seem to think that it's a little bit, that they're paying more than their fair share, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And is that kind of what your study shows, or how are you trying to make it equitable for everyone?
I think there's a good balance for that, and the standby service rider was in effect since January of 2017, and actually was suspended in December of last year in 2021, knowing we had our cost of service study going on right now. I think the balance for it is everybody needs to pay their fair share. It's the most simple term I see for it, for all that infrastructure that is built into our system, all those wires, all the substations, etc. And that's what was discussed at the bi-directional metering discussion and what we had last Thursday for public input. Generally where that is, and that's a balance now by using advanced metering, that allows the efficiency of the installation to be true and accurate. Whatever was designed and what actually designed for a solar customer's home and what actually is installed, sometimes they actually don't match depending on how the installation was and things like that. This gives the true form by using this design of bi-directional for whatever they build, whatever they use, whatever they consume. It gives the balance, and then they would sell that back to the utility. So they're actually getting a really good rate, lowering of the cost of their bills, and it's accurate for that time frame. And what it is that would be measured on a 15-minute interval across the month. And then basically each 15 minutes, if they're over-generating, we're buying. If they're under-generating for their consumption, then we're selling back to them. What you will hear is, well, that selling is at 3.5 cents if I'm selling back to the utility, but if I'm buying it from you, it's 10.5 cents. Well, again, at the 3.5 cents of that is buying and selling, but the infrastructure is still embedded in that energy cost to go from 3.5 to 10 cents. And so that 6.5 cents is fixed cost recovery that is actually in the energy rates. It's actually a benefit to a solar customer because they can manage their load profile and actually reduce their fixed cost expense to them to make savings for that customer by how they manage their load profile. And to me, honestly, that's the most fair and consistent. I'm not trying to bank your energy and allow you to use it at a later time. We don't have massive batteries on our system to adjust that buy and sell, so it's actually real time. If you increase your generation at any moment in time, I have operators that are adjusting the load profile for that 15 minutes to make sure that the load, the energy that's created in our system that's to be used and the load by our customers matches up. That's called our area control error, and it needs to be very accurate. So it's all real time, and so that's what the rate mimics. Nonetheless, we will get feedback, and we had feedback from Thursday, and we'll take that and look at our rate design and see if everything matches from that discussion.
Right.
Before we the next step.
Sure, and I appreciate that explanation, Mr. Adair, very much. And I guess that would certainly make sense, as you're generating power as a solar customer, but also needing to use power. But then there's this extra fee, right? That's put on as this service rider, and so in addition to selling power back to the utility at a lower rate than they're paying for it to use it from you, then they're also paying this additional charge, or could be paying this additional charge if approved, that would also go back to the utility, correct? That's what this service rider would be.
No, that's not correct.
It's not.
There is no service rider right now. That
Not
service
now.
rider is suspended, and in this design, there is no service rider. The fixed cost recovery went up for all residential classes, whether they have solar or not, and then everything is in the energy cost.
I beg your pardon. Thank you.
Yeah, there is no service rider or attachment fee. Each residential customer, whether they have solar or not, if they're doing energy or efficiency or not, has that credit against their load. So there is no specific rider for it.
Got you. Thank you for explaining that, and I do apologize for misconstruing what we're talking about, at least in that one instance. But let me ask you then, looking forward, right? So the plan is you've gotten this rate study, and it's going off to the regulatory approval agencies, and then is it your hope that this would be then the standard for the next 3 to 5 years before we do this again? Is that kind of how often the utility looks at their rates?
That's correct, Scott. And what we're looking at is to spread this out over time. This would be a 4-year duration of a cost of service study. So it would be gradually changed over time for that fixed cost recovery, or what's called the customer charge or the infrastructure charge. Utilities do this about every 3 to 5 years, depends on the utility. Last time we did one was in 2017, and it was for a 3-year duration. And then now we're looking for a 4-year duration. If you look, there was a gap actually from the 2017, which finished in 2020, until now in 2022. The reason we did not advance it, there was a lot of things going on with COVID at that time, and we really wanted to see it and see how things progressed. And we also wanted to see, we already knew that our revenue recovery was reasonably stable, and so we wanted to let things, I guess, settle down would be a good way to say it, although we could argue whether they're settled down or not today.
I understand. It's true. And certainly when you talk about time in the 2020 year and 2021, that's a new concept, I think, that all of us have lived through. So I definitely understand what you're saying. As you kind of look into your crystal ball, Mr. Adair, and try to predict the future, I would assume in 5 years from now, you will have probably more solar customers than you have now. That seems to be the trend and the way things are going. And so for a utility, with thousands, tens of thousands of customers, you have to kind of plan for that potential, right? That some of your demand will be shifting over the next 5 years?
Absolutely, and that's a piece of it. While we were on this call today, or just before this call, I had an email that a new solar customer was applying to install solar at their home just 10, 15 minutes ago.
Uh-huh.
And so that's a piece of it. We're seeing a lot of interest. I think for the month of February now, I think we've had almost 8 solar customers in the last week and a half, let's say. So we are seeing a lot of interest, and so we plan ahead for that. I think what balances with that, right behind this cost of service, we're looking at our integrated resource plan, which is what should our generation portfolio as a vertically integrated utility look like. And one piece of that is, what does solar penetration look like, and how do you respond to that, to have quick ramping ability, when solar goes away with cloud cover, things like that, to still meet the needs of our customers.
Right, and that's kind of leading us into our next topic of conversation, which is a little bit more near future, and that's this summer. And that was really the impetus for me to contact you to talk about, what are the plans for the Farmington Electric Utility this summer. We're hearing a lot from P&M, which does not have customers in the local area, but they are saying that they may not be able to meet the power demands of customers in our state because of the planned retirement and their abandonment of the San Juan generating station this summer. I know there's talk underway of maybe extending the life of the plant, at least for P&M's ownership of the plant or working with the plant for maybe 3 more months to get us through the summer. But as far as Farmington Electric Utility goes, what are the plans to keep the lights on, keep the swamp coolers going, and meet the demand of a potentially hot summer here in San Juan County?
That's a great question, and so I'll balance it with a lot of things that have went on recently, and what you see in the newspaper is, our current portfolio of our generation mix right now within the electric utility system is about 40% of our generation comes from gas generation. We have our own gas facility, a Bluffview generating station, a 101 combined cycle. About currently 20 to 25%, depending on the year, comes from coal generation. That's our 43 megawatts in San Juan Station. And about just under 20% of our generation portfolio is renewable. That's our Navajo Hydro Station at Navajo Dam. And then also firm agreements with Western Area Power Authority for renewable hydropower that's supplied to our utility. That leaves us about 20% short of what our total portfolio is in a given year, and we go to the market to purchase that. As you've seen the challenges and the brownout notices within the P&M's notices, I've said often, I don't think I have very low concern or at high doubts that we would have brownouts because of that. It would take some extreme conditions, Scott, like maybe the fires that happened in California in 2020. Or, of course, it won't happen in the summertime, but the ice storm of Texas that happened in February of last year. It would take some extreme event like that to have a scenario. Nonetheless, I think we would be challenged to go and find that purchase power, and I would expect the prices to be expensive. P&M had talked about a 3-month extension, and as you well know, we're owners in the plant, that 43 megawatts or that 24% we talked about. As P&M looked to extend the life of the plant, all the owners did, and included discussions with the city of Farmington. And we are looking, if they get PRC approval and all final approvals are met, to agree to extend the plant through September 30th with our current 4 owners in the plant station right now. Farmington agreed to that as long as 2 major things happened. And I'll say to continue that for that 4 months, I'll clarify that. That's only with 1 unit operating, and that's San Juan Unit 4. Currently, Scott, Unit 1 and 4 operate at San Juan Station. 2 and 3 are retired. So 4 would continue for that 3 months, which would have a great benefit to the city of Farmington compared to the price, I think, in the market and what we could make it for at San Juan. I think that's a cost delta of almost $8 to $10 million to our customers. And if we're successful, that'll be a benefit to have that savings to our customers. The 2 things we needed if we agreed to that as City of Farmington with the ownership was we still need to continue to work out the negotiations between Farmington and Enchant Energy and the other ownership to continue operation well beyond the 3 months we've talked about. We see as City of Farmington that long-term that has a great benefit to have San Juan continue as a low-cost, reliable energy source, and with carbon capture, a very environmentally sound project as well. Going back to the cost of service long-term, we'll talk that if we are not successful with San Juan, based on replacement power and building generation, we think that could be as much as a 6% rate increase to our customers. But we need to see what happens in all those scenarios before we go down that route. The cost of service we talked about some 15 minutes ago had the assumption San Juan continued in it. But that gives you the effect of how important San Juan is to the city of Farmington and Farmington Electric, both short-term and long-term. That's not even talking tax base. That's not even talking the employees that are part of our community. So that 3-month extension, we need to continue those owners' discussions and complete them, and we need to make sure that San Juan Unit 1, the one that will not be operated for those 3 months, is put into a condition that it could be started up once Enchant and Farmington would continue. Those are 2 key points that I was glad that we come to an agreement on. So taking that into play, those 3 months and what you heard for brownouts, I wasn't concerned it was costly, but now that we've considered if it's approved that extension, that makes the concern even less for those upcoming 3 months. And frankly, I'm glad, Scott, to see that we had about 6 inches of purgatory and 17 inches of snow at Wolf Creek over the last 24 hours. So that's waters in our lakes and streams for our hydro plants as well this summer.
That is helpful, for sure. Very true, Hank Adair. My guest this morning, Hank Adair, is with me. He is the director of the Farmington Electric Utility, and we are talking about the future plans for the utility and some of the thoughts about power supplies this summer. And so it sounds like if the generating station's able to stay open for those 3 additional months, Mr. Adair, that would certainly get you through the peak of power supplies in the summer. And then I guess what you're saying is once PNM does abandon that plant and the ownership reverts to the city of Farmington with its partner Enchant, it is the plan for the city and for Enchant to continue running that plant in some capacity, as Enchant then puts together the remainder of its proposal for this carbon capture and things along that line. And so San Juan could still generate power and the mine could still be working to supply coal for that 1 or 2 units of the plant beyond next August, September timeframe?
That's correct, Scott. There's a lot of challenges on things we need to complete with the Enchant project. I've been pleased with that success from an engineering or a technical design, but there's still a lot of things that need to be completed for San Juan to be successful. And that's our goal and hope as Farmington Electric in the city of Farmington. Nonetheless, as we look at our integrated resource plan, we're running scenarios whether San Juan is successful or not and how that affects Farmington Electric as a utility based on our generation portfolio. And so we are building common threads in those scenarios as we build our budgets to make sure we're being conservative yet consistent to meet the needs for our customers long term. So all of that playbook is being played out. I wish my crystal ball was less fuzzy than it is today, but we're playing all those scenarios to the common threads, and being a conservative public power owned utility, we'll adjust those based on the long term, and we'll execute on what's common between San Juan in or San Juan out in Farmington's portfolio. Obviously, again, I'll say it again, our hope is and our goal is to make San Juan successful long term.
Right. You mentioned that your power portfolio is kind of set to about 80%. That final 20% is kind of where you kind of shop around and look for other potential power on the market. PNM, I think, has said that they're concerned that there may not be additional power available for sale during peak times this summer, and that was one of their concerns, I guess, about trying to keep San Juan open for those additional 3 or 4 months. Is that an issue that you're facing too? Is that the power markets are getting a little tighter with supply and demand as demand increases?
They are, and we're seeing that in the market. As much availability, it's more pricing is what I'd say. Each utility is unique, and what I would say is the West and where we're at, PNM and City of Farmington, we're on what's called a seam, and there's different levels of organizations within the grid, if you will. We sit as City of Farmington and PNM sits there as utilities. Then you go to the next layer of the organizations, or you will, the system, and you have what's called a balancing authority, and they are at a broader scale looking at the load and demand. PNM is so big that they're their own balancing authority, where City of Farmington is a smaller utility and our balancing authority is the Western Area Power Authority, which is the federal government. Then you go to the next level above that, which is called the Reliability Coordinator. And Public Service New Mexico has chosen to go to the California ISO or look to the west for their Reliability Coordinator, where the City of Farmington and Farmington Electric has looked to the east, and Southwest Power Pool is our Reliability Coordinator. So we're working in different power pools, actually, between the City of Farmington and PNM. And so that sets a different set of resources that are available to each utility. So I think that scenario and not being in the imbalance market like PNM kind of has reduced the risk or volatility, in my opinion, as City of Farmington for the electric utility. Nonetheless, all the power has to all the way get to our system. It has to get to our doorsteps for us to be used by our customers. And so we do see market volatility and pricing that can be significant there. But we think it's available. As I mentioned earlier, Scott, I think it's available, but it's going to be expensive. Occasionally in hours here and there through those peak hours, it could be challenging. Gotcha. And then if we had a fire like we did in 2020 in California, that could upset the whole market. potentially.
Right, but that is west, and you're looking east, right? So, but I guess that would cause more demand, I guess, to those same sources to the east. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. It ripple affects west to east.
Yeah.
I would even say the ice storm in ERCOT or in Texas, which is its own utility system or grid, if you will, even had ripple effects in pricing even into our system because people are trying to buy that power and it becomes a supply and demand thing. What I was trying to paraphrase is it's different markets, so the risk is somewhat balanced with that. Even though it can ripple into it, it buffers some of that effect.
Understood. I think I understand it anyway, but thank you for the explanation for sure. And we hear a lot of talk about the smart grid and improving our electric power grid in this country. And so there seems to be some of the things that the utility is doing already, at least on the local level. You talked about some of the meters and things like that make it sound a bit smarter than maybe they were a decade ago. But as we move into a smart grid type of power system, could some of these problems be averted or at least easier to manage? Is that kind of the idea?
That's a piece of it, and that's a benefit. As we go further and further, you're going to see more customer choice and more people have load side or behind the meter generation. I think that's a benefit. Some of it fundamentally starts with advanced metering. That allows us to look at load profiles and what I would call clusters of where customers close together may have dispatchable or behind the meter generation. Everything starts with that infrastructure, and that even starts the start of the smart grid. And at the city of Farmington, we're already installing advanced metering. We have 45,000 meters in our territory, and as of today, as we talk, we've installed about 12,000 of them. By the end of the cost of service study, we'll have, that 4-year duration we're proposing right now, we'll have all advanced metering installed. That allows for a lot of flexibility on different rates designs, on different smart grid designs, and allows us to build rates that can help us offset the demand or trim it or send incentives or signals to the customers. And that'll be a great benefit long term. So advanced metering, smart grid, that's kind of the first step, and our utility's already headed down that path. The luxury, I'd say, even with our current cost of service study is, in essence, the rates by using the bi-directional and the AMI already installed. That gives a lot of that time of use benefit to our solar customers already to take advantage of that. So in a roundabout way, they're getting time of use early because they have the flexibility at their homes to make changes that could affect their billing.
Got you. And it sounds like to me, as we talk about customers and consumers are becoming a bit more savvy when it comes to where they buy their power or how their power is generated. And we hear a lot of folks that say, well, I would maybe pay more if I could get power that wasn't generated by carbon-based power generation plants and non-coal or more renewable or things along that line. Is that something that the utility is looking into offering its customers as well if you're not doing it already?
We do that already, Scott. We have a renewable rate. It has all the fixed costs and the wires charges in it, and then customers can actually buy in bulk in kilowatt-hour blocks their renewable energy. The more that would be bought, the more the utility would change their profile, obviously. I think one key thing with this utility we've often said is we like customer choice. We like to give optionality. We just like everybody to pay their fair share of what that choice may be.
Right, understood. And so, Mr. Adair, we just have a couple of minutes remaining this morning, and so it is still kind of the power mix, I guess, that the power generation facilities owned by the city of Farmington continues to be the natural gas, the hydroelectric that you've mentioned, and of course your share of the San Juan generating station but there's no necessarily city-owned solar project, at least as of yet.
That's correct. We designed and actually proposed a community solar project about 2.5 years ago, and at the time the expense for that solar from that project was quite expensive, and so it did not continue on. But I can tell you in our integrated resource plan, we are looking at renewables. It does include solar as we're looking to the future. The balance with that is that 24/7, 365 reliability and how much is in our portfolio long term and how our system can respond to it. Again, our system is quite large, but we're still a small utility. and we need to make sure that it passes the fundamentals of engineering and technology to be successful. But it is included in our IRP as we're evaluating it right now.
Got you. And I guess the other challenge too is the storage of any power that's generated, at least, from renewables, right? That's been kind of the sticky wicket, if you will, because when the sun's out, everybody's generating power with their solar panels, and so maybe the demand isn't as great as when the sun isn't out, and then everybody wants to turn on their televisions or radios or air conditioners or heaters and want that power. So that's the situation you find yourself in, I suppose.
Absolutely, and we look at it long term, and we were even looking at battery storage as part of our integrated resource plan. We even looked at scenarios. There's been proposed projects for pump storage, which is another type of energy storage that have been proposed in the region. We've looked at every option, if you will. Looked at wind, solar, battery, quick response thermal. I mean, everything that goes with it goes into that scenario. And we're working through that in the IRP, and that's what the modeling will help us define. But you're right. The technology duration for batteries, although the expense is coming down greatly year over year, and how often you can discharge them and how long the life of them is an important thing to consider when you're doing an IRP.
Got you. Understood. And I know the mayor has reminded me of this numerous times when we talk about power, is that it is kind of the mission of the electric utility to provide stable power resources to its customers at a reasonable cost. And that really seems to be the underlying mission of many of the decisions that are being made. Is that a fair statement?
I think that is a fair statement, and even with the cost of service we talked earlier, our rates will still remain to be the lowest in the region with what we've discussed. I think that is core with what we talked about, is low-cost, reliable energy is core to our utility, as well as looking at all those viabilities, which include renewables and things like that, and how they can fit into our portfolio as a good balance.
Got it. Very good. Well, Hank Adair, I appreciate your time with me this morning. It's a complicated business that you are in. Thank you for at least trying to explain it to me so that I could understand it. But I'm sure our audience has gotten at least a good education this morning on some of the issues that we're facing. So thank you very much.
Appreciate the time, Scott.
You're very welcome. Thank you. That's Hank Adair. He is the director of the Farmington Electric Utility. My guest this morning here on KSJE. KSJE and San Juan College present the Student Success Coaching Tip of the Week.
Hello, this is Emin Chi from the Student Achievement Center. This week we're bringing you coaching tips of the week for week 7. Taking good notes. Studying starts in the classroom. Pay attention and take good notes. So when you're studying later, you're just reviewing information. Speak with your professor about recording lectures on your phone. A recording can complement your notes so you can go back and re-listen to the information in case there are other details you pick up on later to note. Effective note-taking strategies can have a direct impact on your study habits and is one of the most important study tips for college.
The Student Success Coaching Tip of the Week, presented by KSJE and the Student Achievement Center at San Juan College. KSJE is supported by the Farmington Civic Center, bringing a full slate of entertainment to Farmington and San Juan County. Todd Oliver and Irving the Talking Dog, Monday, March 7th at 7:30 p.m. The Farmington Civic Center, 200 West Arrington in downtown Farmington. Find out more online at fmtn.org/shows or at 505-599-1148.
The ongoing legal battle over how much people pay to file their taxes